All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I hope everyone's been having a great summit so far and still got the energy going. I am all loaded up on caffeine and ready to go. Yes, sir, you know how to think, yes. My name is Tim Outton. I'm a senior product manager with Ansible. I've been oversee a lot of different things, but one of the things is its Terraform integration.
And I'm Nuno. I'm a technical marketing manager inside of the Ansible BU. And yeah, I'm the one who tends to be building the stuff with the Terraform. And
yes, he's written a lot of the blog posts. If anyone's looked up anything recently on Ansible and Terraform, you probably saw a blog post written by Nuno. Okay, and so today we're talking about terraforming with Ansible. During this talk, I'm going to cover just a quick overview of what is cloud automation, how we see it, and an Ansible primer to how Ansible fits into that space, and then talk a little bit about why you want to consider using Ansible and Terraform together, and how they can be better together, how the combination can really be valuable and deliver some great automation in the space. Nuno's going to take over and do a demo. You're probably going to want to hear more from him than me. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we're thinking about in the future and where to go next. So, and then leave some time for Q&A. There's a microphone up front here that once we have Q&A, ask that you just line up and give us your best shot with any questions you might have on it. Okay. So I just want to start off with a quick primer of where Ansible sees itself in the cloud automation space to set some context to what is going to follow here. Ansible is, well, the way we see it, the cloud automation use case is more than just cloud provisioning and deprovisioning. We see it as a lot of things, and it's not even just in the public cloud space, it's private cloud space. It's dealing with hosted services. It's dealing with cloud native and containers. So we look at it in this like full spectrum of usages. It's also not day zero. It's all the way through to day two. You know, once you stand up this stuff and it's running, you got to maintain it. You got to deal with changes. This is where Ansible can come in, and this is the way we look at cloud automation. We look at it holistically and across all these different areas that you see up here in this graphic. So I was just saying, Ansible is a automation and orchestration tool. There's a lot of other tools out there that Ansible can help you orchestrate and bring together, integrate and work together. One of the areas is in cloud provisioning tools. We have Terraform, which is why all of you are here today, but there's also other tools out there like AWS CloudFormation and the Azure Resource Manager. These are all things that Ansible already supports today and allows you to integrate into your overall workflow. Where Ansible comes in, though, is that we go a lot farther, and your IT stacks are far more than just cloud provisioning. There's all type of networking and security and day two operations, and the list goes on and on and on. This is where Ansible's most useful and most powerful, that you can integrate all this together into the automation that goes across your entire organization and your entire IT stack. So why would you want to use Ansible with Terraform? Well, it's to centralize your infrastructure as code and enhance that capability, the ability to provision, deprovision, treat your infrastructure as code, your plans as code. So you can, with what we've brought to market, you can manage your Terraform resources from one place, but then orchestrate all your other infrastructure out there, the networking, the security, the applications, things of that nature. So the whole idea is to extend your infrastructure as code with Ansible automation and to make Terraform a part of that in your practice. So last November, just in time for reInvent, we released our first version of the Ansible certified Terraform collection. Everyone here knows what collections are with Ansible? Okay. So collections, just for a real quick primer for anyone that might not know about it, is it's a way of bundling up all the different content for a particular domain in a way that's portable, that can be installed into your system. So it's modules and plugins and roles and things of that nature, all in one portable bundle that can be moved around. We released a Terraform one, like I said, in time for reInvent, and this enables Ansible playbooks to initiate Terraform automation in a workflow. So it's able to apply your plan within the Ansible playbook that you're running at that time. So the idea being that you can do any pre-work, you can then reuse any type of Terraform plan that you have to roll out infrastructure, and then immediately follow it with Ansible automation doing additional setup, configurations, tweaks, whatever it is you need to do. Even going out to things like your network firewall or your DNS server to make changes for the infrastructure that you just rolled out. So this is where we see a lot of power and of the two working together in just creating a better workflow and a more cohesive workflow that just works. So the name of that collection that I have there at the top in red, it's cloud.terraform for anyone that wants to look through the docs. Yeah, take a look at that. So another thing we just rolled out, and this is right now something that's only community-based, but we're Red Hat. We're all about open source and about supporting the community. We created a native provider for Ansible. So if you're running Terraform from the command line, you can now set up your plan to immediately run an Ansible playbook local to the machine that you are running Terraform from. So this is just another option for bringing Ansible and Terraform together. Again, this is community-based, and part of the reason we're using that support model is it's only supporting the calling of Ansible playbook on the local machine. And for all you that are wondering about AAP, we'll be talking about that a little bit later. Okay, so with that, we're going to show off, I believe, why the two work great together. I'm going to hand it over to Nuno.
Thanks, Tim. So, yeah, we're going to dive into some of the stuff, some of the more technical things, some of the advantages that we would get using Ansible, and kind of how we bring everything together. Now, you guys are probably aware of the Terraform labs as well, so we're running workshops and we run these labs with Terraform and Ansible, and they tend to be quite popular because it's another way of working with both of these tools, and kind of we try to highlight the way that these guys really work well together. So I'm going to try to do a demo for you where I'm actually going to use some of the examples out of the lab, and we kind of go step by step so you can see how we're building things, and I would like to kind of focus on the provider because I think that's quite important. But now, if we're looking back now at this whole discussion around these guys kind of working better together, right? And like Tim has touched on the fact that we're kind of trying to complete the full circle, right? We have Terraform. Terraform does what it needs to do, does it really well, but Ansible can kind of fill in the gaps, and Ansible can also be the additional glue, right? So if we're looking at a typical solution or typical example where we get the automation platform to actually go and build the manifest files, right? So we're not even talking about, let's pull a manifest file and let's just run it through Ansible. That's easy. We don't have to worry about that. Now, we can start to use all the other functionality inside of the platform. So we can say, okay, well, we're going to actually build it so that I want some kind of interaction with the user. So if we're looking at the platform, this is where we can start to use things like workflows. We can start to bring in the surveys. We want to get the user feedback. We want to be able to use that stuff in there. But we can actually push all of this to go and create these Terraform manifests effectively. So we can get the platform to build the manifest, and then at the same time, we can get the platform to actually go and trigger the Terraform work to go and deploy those resources. Okay. Then it comes a bit full circle because now we've gone through that process where Ansible's built the stuff. Ansible's now gotten Terraform to go and deploy what infrastructure it needs. Well, now what else are we going to do? Well, if it's on a cloud, we can get Ansible to go and query the inventory, build a brand new inventory. Now that we have your infrastructure, we know that what needs to be built. We can build the dynamic inventory, we can use that, and from there we can go to the next step. So whether it's I want to go now and configure web servers, or maybe, like Tim indicated, that maybe you want to do some firewall work or some changes on the network or that type of stuff. The automation platform can carry on. So this is where it's starting to become more of a central tool, right? Yes, we're using Terraform. Why are we using Terraform? People like Terraform. It's easy. A lot of places people are quick to deploy Terraform, whereas maybe they're not so quick to do provisioning with Ansible. I mean, when I was starting to work with the Ansible stuff and deploying stuff in the cloud, it was quite a lot of work for me to get it to the way that I want, whereas Terraform I found was a lot more straightforward. So let's use that advantage, right? Yes, Ansible can do it, but let's use that advantage. So let the Terraform do what it needs to do, and we'll get Ansible to do the rest of it. Ansible will build a manifest, deploy it, then secure it, and do the rest of that stuff. And then obviously, then we can go into the other things of Ansible, right? So we can have scheduled jobs to make sure these instances are secure. We can make sure that the compliance is always met. If you want to even expand out further to things like event-driven Ansible, maybe there's a trigger from observation tools that you can now get Ansible to carry on. So, we might have just handed off a little bit to Terraform to do what it needed to do, but ultimately Ansible is able to give you the value throughout the tool chain. So some of these things are like using Ginger, right? So we have Ginger that most of you guys will know working with Ansible. We use this for templating all the time. So you could have your manifest file built. You could have variable files sitting there from a Terraform perspective, and this is what we would be easily using to go and build your Terraform work. So now imagine you're in an organization, you've already standardized, for example, your account information, your cloud information, but maybe you want to give your users a little bit of flexibility in terms of which OSs they can deploy, et cetera, You could build this and use the Ginger template to spit that file out basically and be able to use that file as you see fit. So we can build it using this, we can build that manifest file, and then after that we can go and actually get Ansible to build it and trigger it out. So part of the collection is obviously the ability to trigger these builds through Terraform. So if anyone's worked with the community collection, I mean, they would have seen obviously some similarities. But effectively, we have this concept of being able to build out. So we can obviously build and trigger that Terraform infrastructure. We can obviously destroy that Terraform infrastructure. But we also have a few other things inside of this collection. So for example, if you wanted to get certain output from the state file, we're able to do that from the playbook as well because we have that as a module inside of our collection. So, we can go and we can actually start to build conditions based on things that are coming from the state file to say, okay, if this has been built and this has been built, the next phase inside of my Ansible playbook, as long as those values are there, I want to do X, Y, and Z. If they're not, then okay, well, let's go through to the other direction. So this gives you flexibility of being able to do that. Now, you can see by these examples, we've added additional backend configuration into these modules, so you can go and specify a little bit more information around the cloud stack, and obviously go from that perspective. Now, we know that, for example, like a Terraform state file, best practices, send it to S3, etc. A lot of the times you'll see in our examples, what do? We take those state files, we maybe encrypt them, and we might store them in a repository or something. That's just how we can work with them, for example, because obviously when we work with Terraform, we work inside of our execution environments. So our execution environments, when they trigger, it's based on a container. So once that job is done, that container disappears. So we don't really have local execution where we can keep our manifest files. So a lot of our examples you'll see, we would have pushed that through to a Git repository, we would have secured it. But obviously you can still follow Terraform best practices by storing this stuff in S3 or anything like that, and then just build your play around that. Now, the modules themselves actually allow us to import those as well. So if you store them inside of S3, we can actually pull those configs, pull those state files directly from there within the Ansible playbook, and then obviously build out your infrastructure or destroy it or edit it, etc. So this is quite useful. I mean, these modules are quite useful, specifically if you already have the possibility of being able to build the manifest the way that you see fit with Ansible. You don't have to build it separately and then put it in. You can really build a nice workflow with all of these tools using Ansible as the driving force between everything, right? So this would be a typical, what we call infrastructure meets code, infrastructure as code meets configuration as code, right? So what would we do? Someone starts a job. We present a survey. inside of the platform where we're saying, hey, you want to build some infrastructure, cool. Tell me what AMIs, for example, you're looking for, what OSs you're looking for. Do you have any VPC information that you want? Do you have a key that you maybe want to upload? Otherwise, automatically we will push the controller key in. You can specify all of this inside of a server. And then with the Ginger templating on the back end, it will go and build this manifest file. And from there, we can then trigger with the modules the building of the infrastructure. Once that's done, pull out the state file, encrypt it, push it somewhere, and then carry on. So that's what we're able to do, and we can tie this all in because obviously Ansible, we have these things like the workflow visualizer where we can actually add in multiple steps. So this is also cool because if something fails, you can add in remediation for something to fail. Maybe something goes wrong with the configuration on the VPCs, or maybe it already pre-exists. We can take that information. We can use the output module information inside of the certified collection to even get that out of the state file and then base that on the next action for the Ansible stuff. So if you look at this example, we've built the project files, we deploy it using the Terraform module. What's the next step? The next step is now we want to be aware of this. So we can get the platform to go and synchronize those inventories. So the platform can query whatever cloud instance, use its dynamic inventory, and say, we're looking for this. And perhaps maybe in your manifest file, you indicated the specific tag. So if it was like a development server, you would have a tag for development server. And inside the automation platform, you can actually say, I'm looking for all of these new instances inside of AWS, for example, but they need to match my tag of Terraform deployment, for example. Then you can now specify only those nodes to now go on to the next action, whether it's a compliance or now we want to start configuration, etc. So you can build all of this stuff too. You can see with the synchronizing inventory, we can also do other tasks, right? A lot of the times you want to deploy instance, but no one else is really aware of it. So what could you do? You could integrate ServiceNow tickets. So because we've now built it, we've built the manifest, we're now deploying infrastructure. Let's log a ticket to say that the ticket says that we're now building this infrastructure. Or if those who are familiar with the workflows, you can actually end up with an approval step. So everything's been done. You have your administrator logs into the portal because he's gotten his notification, and there's an actual button there that he's waiting to say approve or deny. So then we can approve it, and now the developers will get their instances. Otherwise, we can say, we don't want these instances, let's deny it, and we'll actually stop the whole process. So the platform itself gives you all of this additional functionality, apart from the actual automation functionality that we have for the platform, just by centralizing this tool set and basing it around Ansible, working with Terraform. So I'm going to now open up one of our labs. So this is one of the Terraform labs. These labs are self-paced. So you can actually go to the lab's website. You can go through them, etc. This lab touches on multiple things. It touches on basics of Terraform, like building a manifest, deploying it. We also then have around the collection, like how do we work with the provider. So I want to work with a provider because I think the provider is actually really cool. Outside of the provider work, the next challenges are all about bringing Terraform into the automation platform. So that's when we start doing things like surveys, etc., deploying infrastructure, destroying it all through a workflow. So let me just skip here to this next section. This next section is with the provider. Now, the provider is really interesting because we are obviously always thinking about Ansible from a platform perspective. But sometimes we kind of need to think about what about the people that are using Terraform. People are using Terraform, they can also harness the power of Ansible, and that's where this provider comes in, right? So I have my VS Code here, and let me just quickly install the collection. Okay, in case it's not there. So I've already got a manifest file that I've built. And let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so I'm just going to keep this open for the commands to make it a little bit simpler. So you can see that we have your typical provider, AWS, nothing too fancy around that. We have our regions, all of these things everyone is familiar with. This is really just a stock standard instance. There's nothing special about it. So what we need to do, because the way that this provider works is we have the ability to embed Ansible inventory and Ansible host information into the manifest file. So this means that we can go and trigger stuff in the manifest file with Terraform. It will build it, and we're able to then feed that back into Ansible so that we can use that at a later step. So we have this scenario here where we're going to define our provider. So excuse me for just copying code. It just makes it a lot easier to type, or rather than type in. So I specified the latest version, which is 1.1, right, on the provider. And the next thing we have to do is we actually need to specify the Ansible host information. Okay, so we'll do the traditional stuff. I mean, I will still need a SSH key. So let me just quickly grab that. So I'm going to just use the SSH key. Obviously, that's here. Oops. So I'll just push that out. Let me just copy that. Okay. So I've got my SSH key field, my resource there. That's fine. And then, like I said, we have to now define what we're going to do from an inventory perspective. So we have another block that we can add in here, and this block is all about the Ansible host information. So if we supply that there, this is where we're going to have things like which account should we use. So we're using the EC2 user account because it's a rel instance. Which key are we going to work with? You know, things like their Python interpreter. You even have the ability to specify groups, right? So we can specify which groups we want these instances, etc., to work with from an inventory perspective. So let me save that. Now, if we go and we have a look at the inventory is quite important because this is also part of the collection. This is a dynamic inventory plugin. So this allows us to actually feed the information out of the state file that we would have built, because remember, we're going to use Terraform. Terraform is going to build the state file. It's going to have the Ansible host information where we specified things like the inventory. It's going to feed that back into the plugin. So now it's available in the inventory. When we run our Ansible playbooks, it will just query the inventory. It will know which host to deal with or which groups to deal with, and it just carries on like we were, like we've just been doing. So that's my main manifest file that we've just worked with. Now, obviously, I want some kind of playbook, so I got a very basic thing, which is just to install Nginx or a web server. This can be anything, really. And this is ultimately what I want to trigger afterwards. So we're going to do a little bit of a cheat here, where I'm actually going to use a shell script just to put all the processes together. So inside here, we're going to just create a new file, and I will explain exactly what this shell script is going to do. So if we have a look here, let me bring this down. This is pretty straightforward because these are all the steps that you would typically do, right? Do you want to do an init? Do you want to do a plan, etc.? We're going to go and trigger it. Once it's built, then what are we going to do? Then we can go and trigger our Ansible stuff afterwards. Okay, so you can see that we have this where it's going to deploy the playbook, it's going to trigger the playbook, and it's going to run it against the inventory that we've built, where it has the dynamic inventory plugin. And remember, that sources the information out of the state file. And then lastly, we've got a couple of checks here because we want to make sure that Nginx is running. So let's save that. Let's save that, and then what we'll do is we'll just make sure that it's executable. Okay. All right. Cool. Okay, so that should be kind of it, right? So this is going to be using the provider. Again, what does a provider do? It allows us to put the Ansible host information in there. It allows us to specify this that we can feed back into a dynamic inventory plugin, which is basically going to reference the state file. So if we trigger this, hopefully everything works. You can see it's going through the typical process of building. You can see that we've got the lock folders going on. It's built, it's all going through its auto approve, obviously. It's going through all of those steps, starting all of that infrastructure. So this is the typical stuff, right? This is typical Terraform stuff. There's nothing special here. So hopefully, ideally, what we want to see is you want to make sure that that connects back to that playbook. So remember, again, like I said, this is a Terraform lab. So, I mean, this is stuff that you can go do at home, and you can go play with it and modify different things, etc. Sometimes we're just a little bit wary of how long it takes for AWS to respond, so let it do its thing. So the next step, once this is done, is that's kind of when we will trigger Ansible. Okay, so now we're triggering the playbook. Now the playbook's got to wait for connection, so it's going to wait for that node to come up. Once it's up, As you can see now, it's going to go and deploy the Nginx. And then from there, we're going to be doing testing, right? So the cool thing here is you can see that we're already hitting the host, right? We didn't know what that host was. That host was built by Terraform. We didn't know what the host name was or anything like that. We've been able to feed it and push that back into the inventory. Now, you'll see the output here. What is the output here? This is the generic web server is running output, which is what we would have gotten or what we expect when we do a curl. So that's really the provider, and that's the power of it. Now imagine someone who works with Terraform all the time, they want to do all those day two things. They don't have to go and build the stuff and then run it separately. They can actually link everything together and then just get Ansible to do the rest of it for you. You could even build this into an Ansible playbook to actually do all of the Terraform stuff and then follow up with all the day two stuff, which is quite cool. So before I hand over back to Tim, I just want to do one thing, which is I want to actually query this inventory because this is a dynamic inventory. So we should have the dynamic inventory information. So if I just pull this inventory info here, let me clear this. So I want to have a look at that. You can see we have nothing grouped at the moment, which is fine. We're going to have typically some kind of error or something like that if we weren't able to use this inventory. And you can have a look here. There's nothing in there, right? It's just using that provider. So what you should get, which we haven't gotten, is basically the breakdown of Nginx, where we're going to get the interpreter, all of this information that we would have supplied already. If we have a look at the state file, let's have a look at the state file. You can see all of the relevant information that we feed back into that dynamic inventory is all there. That's where we grab things like the ID, the name, etc. And this is quite powerful. I'd spoken about the output part or the output module for this collection, which I haven't done an example of. But effectively, you could run a playbook that gathers all this state information and looks specifically for stuff that you're looking for. So like, for example, let's say you wanted the public DNS name and you wanted to push that DNS name out. With the collection, we can actually gather all of that stuff from the state file and then use it on later on. Use it for something else, push it through to a ticket logging system, etc. We have the ability to basically interrogate that state file. Cool.
Okay. Sounds good. Woohoo! Oh, slides.
Yeah.
I don't want to mess with your...
Don't worry about it.
Yep. Oh, okay.
It will rebuild itself.
Okay, so one of the things I thought I'd mention really quick is we just released a 1.1 version of the provider just days before all of us came here. So there's a few new features that have been added to that community provider. We intend on keeping it up and maintaining it. It's also open source, so if anyone has any feature requests, pull requests are accepted. All right. So with that, I thought I would talk a little bit about where we think, where our head's at for bringing these two tools together. We're not done with what you just saw. We're not going to just stop there. These are things that we're thinking about right now is more of how do we integrate Terraform into the Ansible platform so that it works more out of the box, that you can use a lot of the functionality you get from AAP, like RBAC, like secrets and credential stores, the ability to do distributed jobs, things of that nature. So we're looking at ways that we can enhance the use of Terraform by what AAP can do, that when you bring the two together, you get more, rather than just being a straight runner of Terraform. Another thing we are looking at is to create a provider for AAP. As I mentioned, the community provider that Nuno just showed calls out locally to an Ansible playbook command line. For those of you using AAP, we want to create a provider that calls into AAP and has the job run in your Ansible platform in a distributed fashion. We didn't get to that because there are certain complications that we need to work through. As Nuno mentioned, if you write your state file locally and with Ansible's distributed, containerized architecture, you will lose that state file. And you don't know if your first job is going to go to the same container as the second job. So whatever went local gone. So we need to work through some of the things that are from the nature of how AAP runs, and we want to do that properly. So that's something we're working on, but we intend to come out with a provider that you can run Terraform and have it call out to AAP and tell it to run jobs on the stuff that you have. I already mentioned the functional integration, the things like the credentials, secret store, RBAC, things like that. And we're also looking to expand the backends that we support. I don't know if I jump back to the certified one. We only did a subset that we tested, but I think it's worth mentioning. We're wrapping the Terraform tool. We're doing nothing to hobble it. Anything you can do with that Terraform tool, you can do. We were only able to test it a subset. And so that's the part that we will support because we've tested it and we feel confident about it. There's nothing stopping you from using some of the other backends there. It's just we're not going to be able to help if something goes wrong just yet. So we want to work on that. But for now, there's the 3 major cloud providers that we're supporting, where if you're a subscriber of AAP and you have a problem, you can call up our support team and they will help you through whatever issue you have, and pulling up our experts if they can't figure it out. So that's just a clarification I want to make there on that one. And with that, we want to hear from you. We want to know, how are you looking to use Terraform and Ansible together? Are you using them together? What could we do better? What could make your life easier, that you have a better out-of-the-box experience when you use these 2 tools together with AAP? So by all means, if you have any ideas, we'd love to hear them. Stop me in the halls. I don't bite. And I'd love to talk to you about it. And with that, if you want to talk about where to go next and all your great blog posts.
Cool. So obviously, Terraform is quite an important topic for us.
Yes.
So we're constantly working around it. So yeah, you'll see that there are a number of blogs out there. So everything from the very, stock standard, like why are these 2 tools different? I think there's a demystified blog, which is quite cool. Because I think sometimes there is that confusion where it's a Terraform versus Ansible discussion, and it doesn't actually need to be, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So we have these types of blogs out there. We also have the actual blogs around how to work with a provider. We have the blogs around how to work with AAP as an example. Again, it's not the law of the land, right? It's just ideas. It's just examples on how it works. So yeah, we have a whole bunch of blogs, and then obviously the self-paced lab, which has been updated. There is the current self-paced lab, like I mentioned, has the whole AAP workflow. It has a provider workflow. It has basics in terms of using Ansible, and then basics of Terraform. And we will probably also add the basics around the output module, because it's quite cool to actually work with. So that's constantly going to be updated. And that's really one of the cool things about the labs, is they are constantly being updated. So as soon as there's something new from the collection, we'll add a section into there so that people can get their hands on, not have to worry about using their AWS accounts or anything like that. And yeah, then obviously the repo. The repo is open for people to contribute.
Right.
And have a
Yes.
look at.
Both the collection and the provider are in their own repos that are out there. Like, we're Red Hat, so it's all out there. So with that, I just want to make 2 quick announcements before we open the mic up to any Q&A. Someone will always get up and ask, where can I get the slides? This will be listed on the entry for this particular session. I've already we've turned in our slides, so it's all up to the event managers to post it. So hopefully that should be very soon, in the next day or so, if they haven't put them up already. So just so you know, all this and these links will be in that up there. And then the other thing is to please fill out your surveys. I know they've been asking us to plug that. So yeah, with that, if anyone has any questions, we'd love to hear them. Oh, there has to be questions. I usually present this and I have so many questions for you. Oh, sorry, so we could hear you, if you mind. Yeah, sorry, yeah. Yep. Yes. Oh, yeah.
So how would this work with the remote states? Because you did an Ansible playbook with a -I inventory. You get the inventory. How would that work with a remote state?
So we,
S3 state, for example.
yeah, so I mean, we don't work with the remote states or anything like that. We can use the modules to actually grab them. So if you're storing the states like in S3 or anything like that, when you run the provider and you push it to S3, we don't have access to that, so we can't grab that, right? So typically what would happen is with the current version or the version of the provider that I've used now, you'd build it in that, we go through the steps, we build everything, we have the state files, and obviously you've got to move the state file. So we can move the state file somewhere else. Then with the other module from the collection, we can import those state files back in when we want to automate further out. So that's typically how we would deal with it now. I don't know if the new version of the new provider changes that.
Yeah, problem with sometimes being a product manager, you forget what's shipped and what's in the queue to get done. There was one where through Terraform, it could get access to the state file wherever you had it configured, and then the inventory plugin read from that.
Yeah,
I can't recall if that got out. So, but it's.
I don't think it's been released yet.
Yeah, that's something we're aware of and hope to get out there soon.
Yeah, because we had the same request. We've had the request come through.
Yeah, and yeah. So it's that and expanding the back end so that you can store remote state too.
So that should be out fairly soon because we've already seen demos of it.
Yeah. That's why I said right now as I'm standing up here, I'm like, did that? What? Anyway.
Could it leverage outputs from Terraform?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a module and a lookup plugin for querying what's inside the state file.
Okay, so it does require the state file in the end.
So it does?
It does require the state file in the end.
Yeah, you have to have the state file for it to access it, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's still wrapping Terraform. So it's calling Terraform and getting a JSON blob back from Terraform, and then it's using that to return to you what you were searching for.
Yeah.
So
Fortunately, we do have some concerns with secrets being stored in the state file, so we kind of are averse to exposing the state.
yeah, that's an area that we're looking at. When I just showed the future stuff, we're looking at how we can handle secrets and keys better. It's an area we're working out.
Because Terraform does a really bad state of it.
Yeah, I sort of noticed that as I was doing my research, and that's why we thought, AAP we think handles it really well. It would be great if the Terraform plan can pull from the AAP secrets credential store.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately the best workaround is to
Yeah.
use AAP because then you're reliant on AAP for all the credentials. You don't have to worry about it.
Right, and we have all those connectors to the CyberArks and HashiVault of all things out there that you can be pulling in those secrets and credentials from.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
thank you.
oh, sure.
Kind of an extension of that would have been, we're currently storing our Terraform state in console, right, to try to provide that secure encrypted space
Yeah.
as a remote. So integrations with more integration with the Terraform proper is interesting.
Yeah. I think we get that request quite a bit. I mean, we have just started now this whole process of really working with Terraform. So
Yeah,
that's why all of this type of feedback is really important.
Right.
Because, like when I did the first blog around encrypting everything stored in GitHub, it's because I wasn't a Terraform user, right? I was an Ansible user, and that's what we do. And it was actually Tim who was like, why are you doing this? That's not how we do it. I'm like, okay, wait. I'm gonna
right.
read about it. So like this type of information in terms of you want, this would be cool if we had integration to this, then that's all very relevant for us.
yeah.
There's a question at the back.
Oh. I guess it's using their approval feature in AAP or wiring up to a ServiceNow with a.
Yeah, I mean, ideally we'd want you to run that through AAP, right? So, I mean, the example with the provider is kind of the mindset, or at least the wearing of the hat of a Terraform person, effectively. Now, if you look at some of the examples that we have, like we have an actual structure in these examples where we go and like, you know, create the folders and the project folders first, then we create the files, and from there we start to work on. So ideally what we want is we want to drive this through AAP. Inside of AAP, that's where you're going to have things like your approval process. I mean, before it actually stopped, we even had demos of using things like service catalog inside of AAP. So you could actually go and order what you wanted, and then what you could do then is you could change your provider based on what you wanted, and then, you know, let Terraform do all of the rest of it. So for your question, yeah, I would say let's just look at using AAP for that, and then from there you obviously get all that benefit of using the approval processes, the workflows, etc.
Is this in the most recent version of the collections? Or was it the community one, the open before we went to certify? Because you're saying that, I'm like, I thought I closed that ticket months ago. Okay, try the new one and get back to me if we didn't fix it. Because I really thought we fixed that. That came up and I was like, that looks like garbage. You got to fix that, you know. And then, yeah. Yeah. Yes. It is something that we are looking at. When I said extra providers, that's one of them that we want to look at is using Terraform Cloud as a back end, as a remote back end. I think it would work today. It should work today. We did not get to test it and set up all the CI work that's both important to us in verifying the quality, but it's also important to the support team that when they get a problem and they try to reproduce it, we have to have that stuff set up for them and in place before the ticket lands because of SLAs. You don't want them to, yeah, so. Any other questions? Oh, sure.
So we're calling Ansible from Terraform. So we're doing like a null resource with a remote provisioner that runs curl. That's one of the features of AAP that you can run the template against the caller. I don't remember what it's called, but and you have, it's just kind of clunky that I have to do curl and I'm given like a template number 18.
Oh,
The API that you pull the what's it, a callback.
yeah.
That's kind of the thing I was hoping that provider.
I mean, from my view, I think the provider is very much focused at a Terraform user and a CLI user, right?
Right.
If you're using already things like the controller, etc., then we kind of want you to work through the controller's setup in terms of, okay, we want to have a workflow, etc. If you still want to do like a callback to another playbook or another template, like something with compliance, that's fine. You can obviously do the API stuff, but I think it's like two separate mindsets, at least for me. Like if I'm going to build with AAP and work with all of the tools that we have in there, then I go through that process of building, the first execution environment. How am I going to do this? Like, I think we're talking about secret management as well. Can we embed the secrets into the EE for that specific component? Like all of these things we start to build out, and the workflows and everything that you want to do. If you're looking at just using the provider as is, the provider right now is focused at a Terraform user. It's a typical Terraform user who runs his Terraform workload, then he goes and he runs his playbook. We ultimately want everything to be like, integrated with Navigator and all of these cool tools that we have to help that whole process and ultimately have everything central. Remember, we want everything to go central through to the platform so you can take all those benefits that you would get typically with the platform. But yeah, look, the new version of the provider that's coming out is quite cool. It's quite a lot better. It drives more from an Ansible perspective. But again, it's still focused at the CLI user, the guy who's got his manifest files, who's deploying it. and then running his playbooks, etc. after that if he's doing that. It just ties those two together with that inventory. Cool.
And with that, our time is up. Nuno and I will be up front, though. If you have any other questions, we'll of course be around the rest of Summit. Don't forget to fill out the surveys and have a great tomorrow. Guess today's ending.